What if the Roman Empire had discovered steam power early and jump-started an industrial revolution centuries ahead of schedule? The idea sounds wild, but maybe not as far-fetched as you think, so let's dive right in.
What if I told you that the infinite glory of the Roman Empire could have been preserved? There are some historians who argue that Rome wasn't all that far away from its own industrial revolution. Let's get to the bottom of this. Oh, and at the end, you'll also get to hear about the sponsor of today's SideQuest, Morning Brew. But anyway, here's the Roman Empire at its height, ruling over a vast territory stretching from Portugal to Persia. It was without a doubt the eminent European superpower.
Kind of wild to think Rome had aqueducts, concrete, even central heating. They were basically one steam engine away from TikTok. Some argue if they'd stumbled onto coal-powered tech, we'd be colonizing Mars by like 500 AD. But instead of an industrial revolution, they got senators stabbing each other. Classic Rome. It's the almost invented electricity, but got distracted by gladiator fights energy that makes historians lose sleep at night.
While it lasted, which wasn't all that long. As with many things in life, once the Germans got involved, things went downhill fast. Yet one can't help but imagine a world where Rome had lasted, preferably excluding the dastardly bits like Christians tied to big stakes covered in tar and burnt alive, or being torn apart by dogs at Caesar's cocktail party, for example. In such a based timeline, we may very well have skipped the destructive Middle Ages altogether and gone straight to European global hegemony centuries earlier. It's less implausible than it sounds. By some estimates, Rome was only 300 years away from its own industrial revolution when things turned sour. The Romans had a lot going for them. Coal was mined throughout the empire and was used to smelt iron and to heat public baths. A little-known fact is that the Romans had actually invented a rudimentary steam engine during the 1st century AD in Roman Egypt. There, our good friend Hero of Alexandria put together this wonderful little contraption. It was too small to provide any meaningful amounts of power, but it clearly showed that the Romans understood the concept of steam engines. So that begs the question, why didn't the Romans industrialize?
The Romans literally had the cheat codes in hand. Hero's steam engine was basically the prototype DLC nobody installed. Imagine coal mines, aqueducts, metallurgy, and the concept of steam power, that's like stumbling on Wi-Fi in 10 BC and saying, meh, let's just keep using pigeons.
And how close were they to it, really? Well, starting with the technology, the Romans did have the necessary tools to, in theory, build a working steam engine. It would have had to be made of iron rather than steel, though. The Romans hadn't figured out yet that adding carbon into the mix makes it a lot stronger. An iron steam engine would be able to withstand about half the pressure and would thus deliver a lot less energy. It would still be useful, of course, until you considered its price. Unfortunately, iron was quite expensive during Roman times. It cost very roughly 7 times as much as it did in Victorian England, and 20 times as much as steel costs today. But even if an enterprising senator or governor splurged out to get such an engine built, he would quickly run into a big and fairly obvious problem. Steam engines on their own aren't particularly useful. Without the necessary infrastructure like railroads and train cars, getting lots of stuff from point A to point B gets rather difficult. Making tracks out of iron rather than steel would be a big no-no. You'd either have to carry very light loads, or you'd have to lay new tracks every other week as soon as the old ones crumbled.
So basically, Rome was in this weird prototype purgatory. Sure, they could have made a steam engine, but it'd be the IKEA version. Expensive, fragile, and needing constant replacement. Iron that costs 7 times more, that's not an industry. That's a rich senator's flex toy. And without railroads, the engine's just a glorified tea kettle. It's like inventing the smartphone, but forgetting cell towers. Rome had the blueprint, but no ecosystem to actually use it.
Now, even if the Romans somehow built a fully functioning railroad for one of their mines, it would have been easily outcompeted by something as simple as a cart pulled by a pair of oxen. This also applies to other areas of the economy, like farming and manufacturing. Rome, as we know, was built on the back of good old-fashioned slavery, and no one really cared to make the work of the slaves any easier. They were slaves, after all. This goes on top of the fact that there were very few people in Rome with the resources to even try such an undertaking. I mean, there were no banks or stock markets or insurance companies, so unless you had truly stupendous amounts of money or appetite for risk, attempting to apply any industrial innovations would have been beyond your reach. Only the very top echelons of the empire could have tried it, and they were usually too busy trying to usurp each other and planning civil wars. If only they had some place where they could read all the best news and stories in business, finance, and technology, maybe then Rome could have survived after all. Luckily for you, our good friends over at Morning Brew do just that.
That sponsor segue hit harder than a Roman chariot crash. Like, we're deep in slavery prevents industrialization mode, and suddenly Morning Brew, honestly, the tonal whiplash is hilarious.
Their daily newsletter helps you get up to speed on everything important going on in the world of business and tech, with a delicious dose of wit and spicy humor. Keeping up with the news has never been easier, and the best part is that it's totally free. You can subscribe to Morning Brew by going to morningbrewdaily.com/SideQuest, or by clicking the link in the description below. It'll take you 10 seconds, my friend, and it'll make your mornings a lot better. But now, my friends, I must away. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next imperialistically industrial episode of SideQuest.
The ending really ties it together with this tongue-in-cheek, what if Rome had Wi-Fi energy? And honestly, it's the kind of speculative history that makes you want to rewatch. SideQuest did an amazing job mixing deep research with playful humor. Links in the description if you want the full ride. And who knows, the next video might just flip another big piece of history on its head in ways you won't expect. Stay nerdy.